of people that this person may have acted inappropriately with, then that is going to help facilitate an investigation. So then part of me sits there and thinks, should the person be named?
Well, it's a very difficult area to get into, and I don't want to because I'm not a lawyer, and I don't want to say anything on air.
No, but I want your view.
I think on the whole, people should have a degree of anonymity when they're charged with an offence, partly because nowadays the criminal justice system is so slow. You can wait years to be charged and years again to get a trial, and you have that hanging over you all the time, and I think that's simply unfair. And to have your name out there as well at the same time can completely blight your life for a number of years now. I wouldn't feel so strongly about it if people were charged and brought to trial more quickly, but that seems to have fallen apart.
And there's no suggestion at the moment that anybody's going to be charged with anything. I think, you know, the reason that we have had this change to privacy laws is because of the terrible, terrible way that Cliff Richard was treated.
Indeed.
You know, and that was awful. And Cliff Richard, Paul Gambaccini, you know, if you think back as well to the slurs against Lord Britton, Lord Bramall, you know, facilitated to a large extent by the police, it has to be said, in giving details to journalists. So I think, actually, although it is an extremely complicated, as Mark said, it is a minefield, but he walked through that minefield very well without giving anything away.
Well, if I was one of the fellow presenters, colleagues of this person, I mean, they're all coming out. It's like... I don't know if anyone remembers that song, that Shaggy It Wasn't Me song. At this rate, they're all going to have to do like a cover version of that. They're all coming out and say, it wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. Do you know, let's speak about the licence fee, if we can, because some of the salaries of some of these BBC stars were published today. Some eye-watering sums there. I'll get it up on my screen if I can. Let's have a look. See what we've got going on. So, highest paid BBC presenters, Gary Lineker, 1.3 million Smackaroonies, Zoe Ball, just shy of 1,984,000. Hugh Edwards, he's 439,000. Ken Bruce, nearly 400,000. Fiona Bruce, nearly 400,000. Many people look at this and say, do you know what? Why are we, taxpayers, having to fund these salaries and, more broadly, the BBC? Do you support this kind of whole licence fee funded need for a broadcaster like this?
Yeah, I think the BBC is being very stubborn and slow in not facing up to the fact that the licence fee is an anachronism in a digital age, and that you can't... Basically, it was a tax on television receivers, on televisions themselves. That's really what it was. You had a television, you had to pay a tax on it, and that went to the BBC. Nowadays, there are so many different channels, so many different modes of getting hold of things, and the BBC has to go around extending it so that on your computer, if you look at your computer on BBC News, it comes up and asks you to confirm you've paid the licence fee. Nobody knows whether you have. They can't enforce it. It's an anachronism, and the BBC itself.
But I thought they could enforce it. I thought you could go to prison for not paying this.
You can if you have a television, but I don't know how they do it if you're watching your computer.
Well, I used to see. Do they still have those big vans?
I mean, I have a television. I want to say I have a television licence.
Well, that's a very reassuring.
Very good.
If I watch the BBC and I click the button saying I've got a licence, I have got one.
But it's not just it's not just about the BBC. It's to watch live broadcasts as well.
And it's to watch everything. You're right. And I think the BBC itself should be thinking imaginatively about how they're going to fund themselves, how they're going to get the public to contribute to funding them in the future, and come forward with a more imaginative idea.
Jo?
Well, I think it's really important that we have a broadcaster that is free of commercial pressures. I think it's incredibly important that we have a news service that is recognised around the world. It is one of the sort of soft diplomacy tools in our arsenal, that people trust the BBC News. You know, BBC World Service is hugely important to many, many people. BBC monitoring services, BBC foreign language services are vital to people around the world. I think there are some things that the BBC does absolutely brilliantly, and I think, you know, when we went into lockdown, the stuff that they were producing for schools, for education, you know, pretty much overnight was absolutely brilliant. But there's other stuff that they do.
But is that really their job? I mean, do we
well,
really,
they're a state
really
well,
need?
if you argue that they're paid for by the taxpayer, then they should be providing those services. So yes, I think it is their job, and that, you know, they've got those tools at their disposal. I think there are things that they do that are purely commercial. That shouldn't be part of the licence fee, and I think it's very difficult, as Daniel says. I mean, you know, things moved on. Lots of people watch the BBC not when it's on the telly, on YouTube or something.
Well, there you go. Let me know your thoughts. A bold statement there from Joe saying that people trust the BBC and BBC News and all the rest of it, and that it's impartial. I wonder your thoughts.
Particularly abroad.